What's up, YouTube, and welcome to the MC's Unscripted, where we talk to artists, entertainers, and behind the scenes decision makers who are the best at what they do. And today, people, we have one of the best at what she does, Lisa Oduor-Noah. Now, she's an unbelievably talented singer, songwriter from Nairobi, Kenya, with the voice of an angel and a strong academic knowledge of music. It's no wonder she's gaining a fan base around the world. So much so that she just finished a wildly successful months-long Australian tour, and she caught the attention of this channel. So, Lisa, welcome to the MC's channel.
Hi, Doug. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent.
Oh,
Thank you
glad.
so
Thank you for
much.
having me.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for agreeing to let us talk to you. I've been listening
Of
to your
course.
music nonstop since I heard about you,
Yeah,
and I gotta say, it's amazing. I mean,
thank
it's
you.
before we
Hmm.
get into the nitty gritty, because I also want to get into your story. Your story is so interesting, and inspiring, actually. But before we get into that, a lot of people, I know you guys out there, we have a lot of music educators out there, got a lot of musicians out there,
Hmm.
and I want to give them some meat. I want to give them some education. So,
Uh-oh.
how was the tour? How about we'll start with that. We'll ease you into the education.
Oh, the tour was great. I was actually there from all of May and most of June. So 10 performances all over Australia. Sydney, Adelaide, Orange, hung out in Melbourne. And I was there actually the year before for a little shorter time, like 3 weeks, but did about half. So we added a bit more extra and it was incredible. I got to play with a bunch of some of Australia's most incredible musicians. So that was an experience I would never trade. So yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah. So, how's it feel coming back home after all that time?
To be honest, um, it's a little jarring
Hmm.
because Australia is different. We were talking about this with a couple of artist friends of mine and just talking about how when you have a lot of the little things taken care of, for example, you don't need to worry about Wi-Fi or traffic to a certain degree.
Right.
Schedules run fairly on time. And just smaller things that you don't need to think about. It makes a lot of your life easier.
Right.
So Australia, like I knew if I missed the bus would usually be early, so if I miss that bus, I have to wait another 30 minutes. Here, we used to have, in Kenya, we used to have bus schedules, but now it's more like we have these things called matatus,
Ooh,
which I had warned you earlier. If you can
like a
hear
mini
it, it's called a
bus.
matatu. Yeah, 14-seater caravan type thing.
Yep.
And they have these
So,
yellow markings. There are some which are really cool though. Some are named like after characters. There's one called Optimus because like the front looks like a transformer. And these guys do like decal. They're really cool, but they can be really loud. But the other thing is they don't run on time. So if
yeah.
you catch one, that's great. If you might have to wait for the next one, and then it has to fill up, then you go somewhere.
It's the
But
same thing in
yeah, so
Jamaica where I was born. So
I know
really,
all about that. Yep. When the minibus comes,
yeah,
you
the
have you have to
taxi.
just wait.
Yeah, for the sweet. Yeah, so that's the story of our lives here. And then also just um our entertainment industry in Kenya, it's developed to a certain degree, but we don't have as many how do I say um like performance rights organizations or that are actively working. So I as an artist, someone might say, have you signed with a copyright board or have you signed with your music copyright association there? And most people won't want to because, for instance, was it a couple of years ago? It was completely disbanded because people were being paid like this much of a royalty in
Wow.
comparison to like the streams they have on YouTube or on online or even on different platforms. Like we have one in Kenya called Skiza, which was Skiza means to listen in Swahili. And you pay, is it what, 20, depending on the price of the song or how popular it is. The price varies, but it could be something like $1 right now is 140 shillings, or more. Okay, and so you pay like
That's interesting. You guys still
uh,
use shillings too.
yeah, we do.
Okay.
A lot of Eastern Africa has shillings still, so you find that a song, if your song is popular and it's priced at, let's say, maybe 15 to 20 shillings, um, which is like a 2/10 of a dollar
Yeah.
ish, a little over a tenth, and you have the populace buying it, you make good money, but then you have an issue of middlemen. Not to say that this isn't an issue globally, because I've also seen the recent SAG-AFTRA strikes,
Yeah.
and um, for us guys here, we don't even there's not even been a strike for that. We've made a lot of noise about it, but I still have to worry because I'd rather be registered to an international PRO rather than be registered at home. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that also. A long time ago, when there's a type of genre of music in Kenya and Eastern Africa called rumba and also Lingala. And it originates mostly from Congo and then partly from like Western Kenya and Nairobi. And we used to have a lot of record labels here in Nairobi, and they recorded a bunch of Congolese musicians. But after that, for a long time, they all disappeared. Now, that leaves a big gap. So
Yeah.
you find that for musicians, a lot of us have been independent, and then you've had to reach a certain peak before someone takes interest in trying to help you push that vision.
Yeah.
Even now, like there's a famous boy band called Sauti Soul who I think they got their distribution deal, I think with Universal, give or take 2-3 years ago. So seeing the contrast in having an entertainment industry which also, like, Australia has grants, so it's supported by the government and they inject funding and makes the disparity is actually quite big. So Australia was so good for me, but it also made me realize that, whew,
There's a lot
got
of
a lot of
work
work to do at home.
that needs to be
Yeah.
done at home. Yep. As
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
there's two things you mentioned that I was going to get to later. I might as well at least mention them. Number one,
Go ahead.
um, the boy band
Mm-hmm.
that you said was signed to Universal, right?
Yeah, for distribution.
For
Mm-hmm.
distribution. Let me tell you what I found. We'll just say Afrobeat
Mm-hmm.
because here they
consider Africa
Yeah.
one big place.
Yeah.
there's no countries
True.
in there, right?
Unfortunately.
But
Uh-huh.
I find it to be like K-pop. And I was going to ask
Mm-hmm.
you, what do you think about that? The idea that Western music, American, not even Western, let's just be, America is such
Mm-hmm.
a powerhouse in entertainment.
Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because of the schooling for entertainment, mainly because of
Absolutely.
consumer society, um,
Absolutely.
and a few other things, not because of grants and not because of the government. So
Right.
the idea that for something to be Korean, they have to make sure they
Mm.
put a little bit of English in there and a little bit of hip hop and a
The
little bit
crossover.
in order to cross over.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with Afrobeat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's good or bad. I just found that to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of our popular music, especially in Africa, comes from listening to American music, American or UK music, because a lot of the stuff that was sourced locally, for instance, if you think about Miriam Makeba and some of these older artists, like there's one of the Congolese artists we like called Franco, he, unless you were like my parents' generation, or older, that was music for them, and they loved it. Like I have records here that from my parents and my grandparents. But nowadays, those are the stuff you use for sampling,
Right.
which you put in an English song or an Afrobeat song, and
Yeah.
then someone's like, "Oh, yo, what's that jam?" And then I mean, Kanye did it, with was it Diamonds and a couple of other songs where he's actually sampled a Kenyan artist called Ayubogada, and everyone is like, "Yo, that sample hits," and we're like, "That guy's Kenyan. His name is Job Seda," and you're like, but there are people who grew up listening to him, but now all of a sudden America's like,
Look
we
at
got to
what
know
you
who that
have.
is. But you see, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing because music is a fusion of your origins, parts of who you are when you and your moments of like when you've grown up and when impact has been so felt, in your life, as well as the knowledge that you gain, maybe if you had an education or if you learned an instrument or if you were just in the environment that catered to that.
Right.
So I don't think they're wrong for adding the English or having a bit of crossover. I think it's another thing if they're doing it because like I know I want to just make it big so it can go somewhere. But I think it's different if you naturally just create like that. Because I love new soul and I can't not say I don't like it anymore and I refuse my music to be like that.
Right.
I can't even deny the fact that when I listened to I was sitting in a theater hall in Australia and we were watching someone called Oduor-Noah from the UK. And he is Afrobeats, but he's grown up in the UK a lot of his life, but he's borrowing from the culture and high life music from Western Africa. And he's fusing that sometimes with this like UK pop, which is almost UK Australian Kylie Minogue-ish sound. And in your head, you're like, those don't sound like they should go together. But it works because that's who he is. That's what he knows, So what can you do?
It's a great perspective, actually. So I'm here, waiting to see, well, what's that culture really sound like? And the truth is,
right,
the world is smaller, and that is what they sound like. It's together. So Kanye may sample you and your history one day, but you might speak English and use chords invented in America called blues chords, right?
Exactly.
So
right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But staying with the cultural your
reference,
heritage, as it would. Today, the song Today.
Yeah.
What is that rhythm called? Like, there's this 3/4 going on. Like, there's a
yeah. Yeah.
Right? Something like that.
Because there's 1, 2, 3. You hear that and you hear the it's the and a lot of language and rhythm from where I'm from offers to that. I wish I could show you even more tribes and cultures from where I'm from because that's how it naturally feels. There's a music from people from my tribe who are called the Luo, and it's called Ohangla. It sounds almost like the name. In your head, you're like, I don't know what that sounds like, but it's like music that makes you kind of be suspended a bit. We call it like music that makes you sweat a little. It's called Muziki Bila Jasho. You don't move so much, but it's just great. And that's how Rumba was also described because when you watch your parents dancing, you don't see them like trying twists and turns and throwing you in the air. They just kind of held this like nice little space between them, having a conversation about the kids, and that's how it felt. So today, I call it my happy song, and I wrote it with my friend from Zimbabwe called Mufaro Kambarami. And she just played the chords, the F sharp, 1 flat 6 flat 7 1 etc. and the interchanges, yeah. But then we had this thing like it's like a walk like that.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll do one better. I'll do one better. Let's play this thing. Hold on. Oh, do you have perfect pitch?
Oh, very good relative.
Exactly wow.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, let me see this here.
I am breathing again, I gain from your presence this feeling.
So right here we got 6 8.
Warmer than summer.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right?
From my day.
And then the 3/4 is so genius.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it's the same, but the flavor completely changes.
Yep.
Your heart precious on the earth. Newness is found in the beauty is the ground. We walk on, you are like clouds, bringing the rain to my deserted mind, shade to the burning of my skin. You are experienced today, 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 today.
my favorite songs to perform, actually. Fave.
It's got to be. So that going from so first of all, does that rhythm have a name?
So there's a rhythm in coastal culture in Nairobi called Chapata. So it's like chaka cha chaka cha cha, or you do chaka cha 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 cha. So there's that. Yeah, it feels almost like a combi of both. But then when we put in the kick in the verse, so you can feel the four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4.
That's
1,
the
2,
3 over
3.
4
1,
thing.
2, 3.
Right.
And then I'm still singing in 6/8. I am feeling it, da da
That's the
da da
key. That's
da
the
da
key.
da. Yeah.
Yes. It goes from this water, right? A little
Yeah.
nice brook of I don't know how to call it, the sensual sounds and easy flowing, and then all of a sudden behind it, it's like, oh, we're not done yet.
The drive. Yeah.
And then at the end, I'm a drummer. If you haven't noticed, I'm a drummer.
Yes,
Okay, what the heck is going on there? They go off. I just wanted your perspective on it. I wanted to understand what was your part in writing of the music, these time signatures, or was it just words? Give me that. Give me all of that.
So, I mean, I wrote the whole song myself in terms of like the lyrics, and for me, I wanted to feel like someone was swaying with you, because the idea of today is that like life can throw anything at you, but you need to be able to like it's like a bird flying. And that's why the bridge makes me so happy. When I say the morning has come, like you can imagine this bird like soaring. And at the end, when I don't know what happened when doing the session, I just had and it's if you think about it, it's actually in 4/4.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
so
It's just syncopated
yeah.
4/4. It's
How those rhythms all come together just amazed me. Just amazed me.
I think you'd have a great time if you came to visit Nairobi, because
Are you kidding me?
if you think I'm great, you can imagine what else is sitting here. I'll send you some more music after this.
Please do. And just for the people, hopefully you don't copyright strike me, but they need to see this. Oh, that's just the taste. They can't get too much of that, Lisa. They can't get too much of that, Lisa. Just a taste.
Just a little bit.
Just, woo! Man, I heard that and I was like,
Yeah.
I need to ask her the process of that. So let me ask you a kind of a deeper question. In that question, right? In that inquiry,
Yeah.
the reason why I asked, what did it have anything to do with the music or the writing or the instruments, is because I also know you went to Berklee.
Yes.
You went there for, I'm guessing, voice, but
No.
no.
My degree wasn't in, well, that's my instrument, yes, but my degree was actually in contemporary writing and production.
There you have it, people. That's why. This is what I'm saying.
That was the next question. I have it written here. Composition, instruments, and performance all had to be a part, and all of that is kind of in the production. And
Absolutely.
so that is why your songs are so well written, so well done, so well arranged and orchestrated.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I wondered if, I knew obviously that it's not just by chance, but if you were just picking or having other people write it, well, how much do you have? How much do you?
say, or your writing is inside
Oh, what's my
these
contribution?
arrangements? Yeah.
Right. So one thing I had the pleasure of and that I really enjoyed about Berkeley is that you meet people from all over the world and their impact on your music is felt. So for instance, like for today, when we listen to the original one of the first times I wrote it, it was a lot simpler. But you put in a percussionist you like who picks a bell, a cowbell, but that's like a bit muted and is like, let me just have a freestyle moment over this, right?
Right.
And you have like all your lyrics and the parts you want people to sing, and then you have someone who thinks, why don't we put 4/4 to drive that there? And you're like, that's true, so that they don't play the same groove over. I remember one of my um, really good friends who's a producer, who I have a song called Runaway with. His name is Juan Carreño Ariza, and he talked about how sometimes you have to keep something changing over 18 or 16 bars, right?
Right.
So that people don't just feel like, okay, I've heard this part before. But how do you keep it changing in a way that's still authentic to me and the feel that I like, so that I'm not just like, it's just a big, it's like someone pulling those like little surprise party poppers.
Right.
It's more like the ones where instead of them going like, whoa, what was that? It's more like, oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Um,
You
and I hope
definitely
to make
sound it.
music like that. Yeah, thank you. So working with people like one of the producers for before it even got onto coming out in 2019, I recorded it in college with a whole different band. And that one had one of the producers was from Ghana, and I think he added some of the groove elements as well. I have and then when we came now later, I got my friends, I arranged the parts. I had like it was so much fun. I enjoy creating music. For example, that's actually what I'm doing this Saturday. I have a show where I'm producing vocals for a Kenyan artist. Her name is Sage, and her full name is Chemutai Sage. And I love to imagine what music can sound like if, let's say, I wanted to paint a picture. So for today, for example, in my head, I think someone would listen to that on a sunny day, sitting outside, being with people they love, which is what the song is about. That's why I say, in the second verse, I say, "Hurt stirs your fears, but
Mm.
your heart, precious, only rests in my hands, guarded from the rest of the world." And then newness is found on the view that is the ground that we walk on, because we're like clouds. And I say, but you are like clouds, so like shade and peace and cool. But even more so, I say you're bringing rain to a deserted mind, but shade to the burning of my skin. You are an experience
Wow.
today. Yeah. So that's what today means for me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me move over Shakespeare. My goodness. Um, so I'm forced to ask
Go
that
ahead.
you called World on your SoundCloud, World Music.
I love
I
SoundCloud. Ooh.
yeah. So I'm gonna go back to this idea of jazz, R&B, pop,
Mm-hmm.
Afrobeat.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know, well, for instance, Kato Change and the one that did with Kato was it
Yeah.
Aparo? I don't know how to say
Aparo. Yes.
Aparo. Okay,
Yes. Aparo.
that song. We're gonna get to your
Mm-hmm.
love of guitars and strings because every video you had
Yes.
is like that. But before we get there, and
Mm-hmm.
he's amazing. This Kato Change,
He is.
he's amazing.
He is.
But
Indeed.
in the chorus, like you sing this interval, it almost seems like it's introducing a different key when it comes
Oh.
on, and
Uh-huh.
it still meshes and brings the rest of the chorus along. I think almost sounds like an incidental note, and it's
Yeah,
definitely
baby.
difficult to sing, but not if you have perfect pitch. Now that I think you may have, um, but all of that, the difficulties are a major charm of jazz and classical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Intellectual stimulation is one of the major
Yes.
parts of the music, right? To stretch it, but
Mm-hmm.
to still
Yes.
find a way to frame it with pop sensibility. Okay, can you
Mm-hmm.
talk about that process? How far do you go? How do you make that decision when you're
On
writing?
writing.
Is it
Mm,
more fun? Like, can I do this? or are you looking for that strange?
Actually,
Let's come out naturally.
it depends on who I'm actually working with. So, for instance, like and also I feel like sometimes music is like color. What
Mm-hmm.
can I blend together? For let me use. I have the perfect example right now. So I have a purple and a blue bottle, right?
Okay.
These two seem like they'd be great. Like, but then if I add, what other shade could I add that could maybe go? It's like building a color palette. So, for instance, like with Kato, aparo, do, 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 right? In your do, da, da, ya, do, da, da, ba, da, da, da. And it's like kind of what Coldplay do when they leave you hanging with that T, like that seventh thing that they do. Like,
Yes.
came out to meet you, told you I'm sorry. Na, 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 da, silence apart. Nobody said. And part of you is like, it's the highest part of the chorus, but I didn't expect you to give me that note. It just come from sounding so droopy. So where are
Right.
you taking me off to, you know? And like for example with Kato, he does this thing sometimes where he's like, he'll be like, give me riffs to play on my guitar, or he'll do the same thing to me, and he'll be like, can you try and sing this line? So he has a song called Samabaya where he does dum 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 da do dum dum da do dum 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 da ba dum da do da what is
Constant
it
mode changing.
da exactly. So and it makes so you see how I'm beaming right now because
Right.
for me part of me is like that is yummy. It's kind of
Yes.
crunchy in a nice way, and so whoever I'm writing with, for instance, with that Runaway song, sometimes I feel like the melody might just come to me and it'll be something simple, but then I guess some pieces where you kind of take it apart, you know? So there's a song I have written about home called The Oasis on Bazi Street. And the melody's very really simple. I just say, life came calling, said follow my heart. Because you wanted it to feel like home. So I said, and the guitar line does da da do da do da.
Mm.
So for me, I was thinking, I don't need to make the music as complicated for what I want them to feel. And a lot of the times, sometimes you can have complicated music, but you find let's use like rock with you, right? It seems it's that modal interchange thing, but then the melodies, girl, close your eyes, let the
Right.
rhythm get into you.
And
Not he's not going so far, you
And
know?
that's the pop part is
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
decisions that you make.
vocally, the
Hmm.
melodic lines. So
Exactly.
I want to I want to show the people what part I'm talking
Sure.
about here,
Hmm.
because when we start talking about modes, um, I don't. Yeah, there's people who are like, wait a minute, what are you talking
What
about?
is
I
that?
just want to give them a little example.
Yeah.
Forgiven, your
I
word
know what you're talking about, I think.
promised to me despite my actions, inconsistent. Aparo, kikaniwacho, kibudo ewia. Aparo, I'll with the heart of a warrior. Aparo.
It is.
What happened?
Tattoo Habib.
What happened today? What was that?
Just, I mean,
I knew. This is what I'm saying is that it it feels like it should be too complicated for pop,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
it's not. It feels like
No,
it's a bit more jazz than R&B, but it's
yeah,
not
but
because
it's not.
and I'm just thrown at how you're taking all of this together and putting it together.
Mhm.
And I don't think I have a question anymore with that. I think we have explored that, and
I just wanted
Yeah.
to,
to I just wanted to tell you that
is
Thank
amazing.
you.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Can I just say, I think it's also a lot of the influence has to do with one, the people I work with, and then two, how I grew up, because my parents didn't just play one kind of music or mostly what was popular on radio. Like, for instance, when my folks moved house, I found like four Olivia Newton-John records. I didn't even know. And I was like, Mom, this is not the music you play that often. Or my dad, I found out my dad used to have a guitar at some point in high school,
Right.
and that he went to watch this really famous old school guitarist called Earl Clue, who my mom used to play so much in the car. There's a song I can literally sing from memory because of that. And I love music that sometimes doesn't even have lyrics. So I listened to a lot of new soul growing up because of my siblings. Then there was hip hop. Then there's my parents who play everything from Handel Messiah to what was popular locally, like in the rumba, and so there was a lot of music I've listened to, but I find that music is like language, you know. I don't necessarily have to be speaking your language for you to understand my emotion, you know.
Mhm.
You can even see it on my face. You can see it when, like, for instance, when you said today and I did, it was like a hug, you know. And and that's sometimes I feel like making music is like that, because you you're not necessarily thinking about what can I add to make this the right song.
Mhm.
It's and I know people have formulas for that, and I think maybe I've never thought about it like that. But for me, it's just I have so many influences, but which are the ones that I'm feeling for this song? So I can go from doing a paro with Kato in that song, and then I can go and listen to India Ari, and then I'll be like, okay, what would it sound like if maybe I wanted India Ari on that rhythm, you know? For me, I kind of think of a para like bossa to da do da mm, da go, mm, ah, yeah.
It does have
And
that bossa feel that
mhm,
on all the ands, right? On the eighth notes.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
Da, 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 yeah. But then it's like saying, okay, but how do I put that in a way that maybe is more familiar to me, you know, something seemingly borrowed, but then also you're like, but that doesn't sound like the way we know bossa, you know, it's like that, like you have a regular clave, but then you do the two first instead of the three, and then someone's like, okay, we know that still, but it sounds kind of familiar, but it's different. But then now it's like, okay, you hear the ands, but his percussive playing makes you feel it
yes,
differently.
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
The idea that all of these influences that you had, I feel the same way. My parents would listen to
Right.
Kenny Rogers and Neil Diamond.
Right.
And they were from Jamaica, so I heard, right? So it's like, I mean, I was the whitest black person in America
Right.
when when we moved here, right? And because you don't really see things in those terms when everybody's black. So in Jamaica, you just see music, right? So
You're telling your story through these, and it doesn't seem like you're constricted. I would ask you, do you feel like in a box? But obviously you don't. And I think it's imperative to mention that story and how it got to be there. Let's talk about your father. Talk about your mother. Let's talk about your sister's guitar. All these musical influence you had around you, and the emotions that you choose to bring out of them. In the Engage talk,
September 5th,
Yeah.
2019.
Tell us about that time in your life, just briefly, because anybody else can go see it. Engage talk, which seems like the African TED talk or something like that. It's
Yeah, they're kind of trying to do something like that.
your father was a super big influence because he was the one that kept and sheltered you and one you could rely on. And your mother was that and then wasn't that. Talk about that
Yeah.
just for a second so we can get into it.
So in a large way, actually for a long time, and it's so funny you asked me this because I've been thinking about it. my parents and as well as my siblings, because I come from a little big family. I'm number 7 of 7, and there was always music in our house. There was always music in our house, and whether people were washing dishes or my folks were throwing a party, like it was everywhere. My mom had this habit of playing ABBA every New Year because they have a song called Happy New Year.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how every time I hear ABBA, if it's not Chiquitita or Dancing Queen, my brain just starts going, is it Christmas or something, you know? So
Oh,
yeah,
man.
so
That's awesome.
so for a long time, growing up until about the age of maybe 9, 10, that's what I saw. So very peaceful. And then unfortunately, my mom succumbed to substance addiction, and it was a really big change in our house. And so music became supremely healing for me,
Yeah.
because in I'll put it the way someone told me, talk about her beauty before her brokenness. My mom worked in a war-torn area, so in Liberia, actually, under the regime of Charles Taylor, and she worked to disarm child soldiers. So you have a 9-year-old at home, and you're coming to work with 9 and under, and you see this conflict. And I mean, she grew up, she was born in the 50s, so she saw a lot of things. So did my dad, but I think the impact was really subliminal and it came out over time. And so that brought up a change in my environment. So in many ways, I found that music was healing for me because it's what I would do a lot of times when I got home and I wanted to spend time because all my siblings are quite largely older than me. So I had a lot of alone time. So when I'd be reading or when I get home from school, I would be listening to music and playing solitaire, or they'd find me singing in my room. And one of the first songs I wrote was a gospel song in 2010-ish, 2010, 2011, because at the time I'd been spending a lot of time at church, and um, it's hard to go through life and not have something to lean on, especially with a parent who's addicted to something,
Right.
because they're your not just your hero, but they're your everything. Like you depend on them for so much,
Yeah.
and your whole world is turned upside down. All of the great things you know about them, you start to question. And so, one of the saving graces, I guess, God provided was church. And that's a lot of the place where I got to implement what I was hearing in these little headphones of mine on afternoons and go and listen to how people, not just Kirk Franklin, but just pick out songs. Like I remember we did a church play where we were doing Micah Stampley, and I had never heard No Compromise. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And there was a whole new world. My sisters used to play, oh, wow, this is a throwback. My sisters used to play Commissioned in the car, right? So we were talking about it the other day. And one of my favorite songs is, how can we stand in the midst of trouble? How can we laugh at our beliefs?
Yes.
And some of these songs are the songs that carried me. And in some way, I think it's God's grace in so many ways, where music literally like was like enveloped me, and I got submerged into a world where I was training people. I was leading a choir, and it gave me space to take my mind off what was happening at home.
Right.
And when that lady told me to look at her beauty and not her brokenness, now I'd already been on a journey of healing, but by the time I wrote that song, for me, music in many ways is like talking to God. I found there's a point when I think this is serious. And my brain just said, whoa. There's a point when I think life was so hard, I couldn't speak out my prayers. And so I used to journal a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then a friend of mine, and for some weird reason, people gift me journals a lot. And at that time, my friend handmade one for me. And she said, this is for your birthday. And that's actually where I wrote my first song. I still have it. And I remember writing, I said, there's some scripture which says, when I call upon the name of the Lord, he hears me. And then in Psalm 91, it says that there, not only when I satisfy him with long life, when he calls to me, I'll hear him. And for me, I was like, God, I don't even have a voice to say what I'm feeling. And I don't know if people, it's a bad habit in in a lot of African culture, and I think maybe even Black culture, to not speak when things are going wrong until it's really bad, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so as a teenager, when you're going through this in your family, you want to talk to people, but you're like, do they understand? And I was like, God, I can't I can't necessarily speak. And funny enough, a bunch of my high school teachers later came and told me, we didn't know that's what you were going through, you know? And I wrote, when I call upon the name of the Lord, he hears me. When I cry out to the heavens above, he hears me. And the chorus says, hallelujah and all glory to the Lord because he hears me when no one else can. When I can't go out into the world and say, hey, this is hard. And hey, I'm a kid. I shouldn't be going through this, you know? Or no one can answer your why is this happening to me and the apologetics and all. But all I needed was some of those verses. Like we had a tough day, and Isaiah 43. I remember my sister, she'll hate me for saying this. She used to Bible bash me when I was younger because I used to sing any lyrics. I was there, tell me what you want the whole time. And she's like, do you know what you're saying? And then I'm like, no, but I like the song. And then later on, I remember one of the first things that got me reading to and clinging to those verses was I'd had a tough day with my mom and my dad, and I never used to pick up my Bible. And the first thing I picked up was Isaiah 43, and it says, hear ye, O Israel, hear ye, O Jacob, I who created you, and then hear ye, O Israel, I who formed you, right? And then he says, I've called you by name, for you are mine. And at that time, I was like, this is a bit too specific. How would you know that this is what I'm asking about, you know? And I was like, I don't even read the Bible that much at that time. And it became such solace. And even I have a song called Daylight. And a lot of people hear my story about me not liking the cold. But the reason I wrote Daylight, my first semester in Berklee was so hard. There was so much change. I'd gone by myself. The winter, let me tell you something, for a tropics kid, the winter was not it. That we had a blizzard every weekend for 2 months. I said, y'all trying to kill me. I just got here. Okay. And I missed home so much. And I wrote Daylight because for me, I realized that what is hope like? And I asked myself, hope is like light. And every time I sing that song lately, I've been telling people, just close your eyes and imagine what you're hoping for. And there's like light cast on it. And as you sing this song and we sing this song together, like it's not so dark. It's not so far. You're getting closer because hope for me is what I learned the most. Like when I got to Berklee, I could read music properly. So yeah, I was submerged deep in it.
That's the quick. Well, you know, I don't want to go there yet. I think there's something way more important that I just heard that I really want to explore, and I think other people
go ahead.
Here. Number one,
music is healing, and the therapeutic nature of music works like that. But we also have to be able to understand that what it is we're healing, or else we can't focus on it, right? Well, so I wonder, with you know, your mom saw war a lot, and so you mentioned maybe PTSD that she's dealing with, but what it sounds like to me is you also have a post-traumatic stress disorder from dealing with that, from seeing it like Black folks have to see it, right? And then
it's not being compounded trauma,
right? Not being able to talk about it, which is something that is a Black is we're told to be kind of like this. You got to be strong, and then there's no one to talk to, and there's a lot of gaslighting, and so we have a whole big show on music therapy and music medicine.
Right.
And the way that you used it, the way that you've been using it, I think is a testament to its healing powers. I was wondering if you've ever focused in on what it is that it was healing. Is it PTSD? Is it a form of something else? Have you ever gone that far in it, or you just kind of let it flow over you?
So I actually went to therapy for a bit. And then also I don't know if it happens there in America, but we as a family on occasion would be called to go for therapy in the rehab center. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'd go with my dad. Sometimes he'd go by himself. So at that time, I think when you're a teenager, you're like, I just feel different, many different things,
Right.
right? But over time, I looked at there's something also called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which can come from many different things, like having a parent who's there but not really present, can also come up from having a parent who's in an addictive substance addiction situation, having let's say very many life changes very quickly, so you don't get to settle, so it creates insecurity in a child.
Yeah.
So some of those things are common to me. For example, the CPTSD, because one minute your family life seems okay, and then all of a sudden it's thrown in a whirlwind, because one of the things that people don't factor in is that it's different when you're a soldier because you're prepped for war. But imagine being someone who's had a desk job for majority of your life. You travel occasionally for conferences. Then you're told you need to go and work here, right? You're told the complexities of where you work, but the actual impact is different. And so now when you have yeah, for example, my mom was going through depression because my mother was this beautiful social butterfly in the sense that she loved hosting parties. She loved being with her family. She was a little firecracker because she had very strong opinions, but if she loved you, she gave you everything. Like she would give her everything for you. And this person, you hear her on the phone and she's calling and she's like, I miss you guys so much. And she's crying and you're being told that people are shooting outside the apartment blocks and they only run on generators. Like, it's so jarring. So imagine I'm her 10-year-old and I'm hearing this is her experience, and you want to do everything you can to save her, but you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So it also develops this as well, like slightly anxious attachment, because on one hand you're like, okay, I know you're working and I know you're doing this for your family, but why don't you just come home? But then I'm also like, I don't know if you'll come home because you're in a war-torn area. So the impact of that of relationships, not just in terms of marriage or friendships, also it means I can be loyal to the bone even when someone is hurting me.
Right.
So even learning about that and also learning about change, because you become change averse, especially when you're younger as a teenager, because now you're like, I want things to stay as calm or as normal as they need to be. So I had to, it actually gave me an interest in psychology. So before I went to Berklee, I had started a psychology degree, which I hope when they finish soon enough, because a lot of people communicate what they're going through music,
Yeah.
or communicate about the world around them in music. You'd be surprised that one of the greatest teachers of behavioral norms and values is music. Look at nursery rhymes.
Yep.
Look at even now other things like for revolutions for politics. A lot of music is behind that.
Yes.
It teaches you a lot about culture. So if you also think about pain and love and hurt and betrayal, you learn a lot of that about music. So, and you look at the people who made it. I mean, look at some of Michael Jackson's songs. Like, they don't care about us is such a direct way of saying, like, look at kick me, kike me, you can never write me. Like, he's directly saying, I'm fed up. And if you think about it, it could have been like a larger political statement. But if you think about it, he could actually be talking about, I'm signed to a label. I don't like touring. I don't like, they're making me do stuff I don't like doing. So and you see that interview, that interview he does where he's like, I don't want to say that. It's like, okay, but you have to do it for the cameras. And he's living a whole life that we have no idea about and being crucified for choices he made, which we're not privy to. And and that's one of the biggest things I think about being a musician. Even looking at someone like Justin Bieber, he was a teenager when he became famous. And all of a sudden your whole life is on display for 7 billion people, and they expect you to make all the right choices, you
The
know.
amount of
For
hate
instance, my mom,
surprises.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't understand. I don't know. I just to insert it. I don't understand why he gets so much hate. The guy was a kid.
You know, he
Get it.
was a baby.
And anyway,
And
continue.
so when you think about, like, even for my mother, there's the compounded trauma from me hearing where she was, which I've learned about. And then there's that anxious attachment, which comes just because you're a kid. No one tells you this is how to form right bonds or
Mhm.
wrong bonds. You learn as you go. And for so many people, you know. And I think I'm glad for a lot more intentional parenting, you know. And in many ways, God's like divine provision brings people to shelter you, like to be like a mother figure, to be like to fill in some of those gaps, you know. But in also other ways, you learn the hard way because, for instance, like when was this? When I got to Berklee, I mean, I wasn't expecting my family to take me, but when I landed and I was on my own, I there was an experience I had with college insurance because they make you pay ahead, but it doesn't kick in until a certain date, right?
Mhm.
Something many people don't know is one of the limits for international students is things like they've changed insurance policies where if it's not recognized by America, or if it's not from a company that's from America, or you don't get no insurance. And insurance, if I do it times the exchange rate at the time, is hundreds of thousands for us.
Yeah.
That's just insurance. I haven't even accounted for tuition or whatnot. So when I landed, I chickenpox for us is so normal when you're a kid, you know. But when I arrive and you're telling me I need to show that I have proof that I've had chickenpox, so I go and do this titer test, which they check if I have the antibodies and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I end up being charged $800 for a titer test
Oh,
and one other vaccine. And in my head, I'm like, I walk into the hospital here,
welcome
and
to America.
there you go. And I walk into a hospital here, and I'll be charged for what? Let's say that test was $300 for 10% plus medicine, right?
Mm.
That's for all of the care. I've paid my general admission, and that's it. And I was like, I'm confused. And then I don't have my parents there, so you can imagine how that amplifies everything in one semester to make me feel like actually, nope, you're alone. You're on your own, kid. You've been alone for this long, you know, and processing those feelings like and learning, giving you anxiety, you know. I had even outside of attachment related, just anxiety that you're like, I have to do so many things that I don't know how to do, and no one is there to teach me firsthand. Because the other side is my parents were retired when I was going to college. They're
Wow.
old folks. So
Yeah.
Because you're the
you learn
last
a lot on
one.
your own because exactly. So um my siblings also have their own lives and I love them. Like it's just you just feel like you're kind of a loner a lot of the time. And so learning about these things for myself, one, it peels off in layers, but then there's some of the stuff that you're like, I can understand why this stuff happened. When now I get to look back in hindsight, um, what allowed it, not just for my mom, but even for me. And then now, even being with a therapist, you start to shed even stuff you didn't understand that was okay and wasn't okay. You come into recognizing that grieving isn't a bad thing all the time. That mourning things isn't a bad thing, you know. And healing has so many layers. For instance, like the person who I knew as my mom as 9 is not the person who I know as her now. But I'm so thankful for the version that I have of her now because I didn't get to lose her, but I still get to mourn certain aspects of her that I have lost.
Yes.
And not because I'm expecting her to show up, but because I'm like, I would have loved if you could. And also bring in a layer of forgiveness because I'm like, it's not because you didn't want to, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I had to learn. You have no choice,
Is
you
that when
know?
you realized you were enough?
Yeah. And um, I started to realize I was enough in college because now I was away from the environment. And then not only was I away from the environment, I was in an environment where everyone is incredible. And so you battle your own self-doubt because you're like, geez, I can't even read music. What am I doing here? I know how to work hard. So if I can work hard, let's see if that pays off, you know? But then you start writing your own music more, and then people are telling you, I had someone come up to me, and it's still one of the most profound things I've ever heard. Like someone said that my music did. She said, thank you for reminding me that there's space for me
Wow.
in, and I was like, huh?
Music.
Yeah,
It affects.
yeah. And she's just,
You have a power. You have a power.
thank
And to everyone else out there, oh, my camera.
you. Yeah.
Hold on here.
To everyone else out there, musicians, remember that not only because Lisa has an amazing voice and writing skills and a passion, but music itself has a power.
Absolutely.
If you think that what you're doing, what you're playing, what you're learning isn't worth anything, just remember there's at least 10 more of those people that came up to Lisa that didn't come up to her, that you've touched with a single note or a single word. It's powerful. It's powerful. Absolutely, Doug. I know that I have so much more. We're going to do another interview, but we're almost out of time here. But I want to ask this question because I think it's so important. Why did you cover Yellow from Coldplay? You mentioned Coldplay. I see there in there. What does that song mean to you and why?
Wow. Wow. Yellow is one of my favorite colors. And I feel like mustard yellow and like this golden yellow. And so in our house, my mom had these curtains for us, which had orange, blue, and yellow. And wow, I feel like I'm tearing up. And every time the sun rose, this is one of the reasons why I wrote Daylight. Every time the sun rose, my room looked like it had the sun rising in my room every morning before she'd come in and be like, wake up, everyone get up. I need to see, you know. And for me, that some of those moments are some of the most peaceful moments in my life. And Yellow, when I first heard it, I think it's such a beautiful way of telling someone how much you love them.
Yeah.
Because he says your skin unfolds into something beautiful. You know, a lot of the times we struggle with the skin we're in. You know, adulting has so much that it lays on your shoulders. But can you imagine telling someone, look at the stars, look how they shine for you, and everything that you do? I can't imagine telling someone that's how much you mean to them, that everything in this world that you think doesn't matter, like, you know, that would never have a care about you, something like a planet and a little gas ball of color millions of light years away is thinking about you. Yeah. You know, and I think also Chris Martin's writing style makes you realize how human you are, but also how important little things can become such big, meaningful things. It's like stopping for a second and taking a look and a smell at the flowers.
Yes.
All of a sudden you're like, there's such beauty in them, but they've always been there, you know?
I pass them by every day.
Yeah. So just like sometimes friendships, you sometimes don't notice how beautiful they are, sometimes until they're gone, or sometimes until you take a second and you're like, wow, you're actually really important to me, you know? Yeah. And that's also what Yellow says. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And, you know, I don't know why I wanted to ask that question. I think there was something in the song, in the voice and the way it was sung that touched me. And the explanation of the color and what that means, and those memories, it's now I see why I wanted to ask that question. Well, I want to know. I want to get into the Museum of Kenya. I want your social work with the Voice for Her, right?
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I have a lot, and but we're gonna do this again. I'll respect
Yes.
the time, and
Thank you.
I have other songs that I wanted to get into. Kidogo.
Sure. Yes.
I have been. You have been. You have been on my mind since
Thank
I
you, Doc.
found out about you because
Mhm.
what I hear in that, and what I'm realizing now is what I hear in the music and what I saw in my research um,
Mhm.
was a kindred spirit and someone that I think everyone who watches this channel could learn from and
Thank
could could grow from your words and your wisdom
you.
and your story.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much for coming. Uh,
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
um, when we leave, before we leave, there's some
Hmm.
singers out there. There's somebody out there doing music. There's somebody out there that uh, wants that needs to hear something from you. You, what
Hmm.
would you like to tell an up and coming singer right now, learning, writing in their journal, going through their stress through
Hmm.
before the post? Um, you have the floor.
Um, wow. I'd say sometimes a lot of things in life don't make sense. And they're stories that you don't understand until you start to write them.
Mm,
Um, and a lot of the times you find that the lyrics you write, for instance, yeah, the lyrics you write sometimes will not only bring you your own healing, but you find they open the door for someone else or 50 people or 20 people to discover what they needed to for themselves. A truth, an apology, a forgiveness, love. And so I'd say, don't think your words are irrelevant.
mm.
Um, Even if it's just for one other person. Um, Write, sing, play, because there's someone somewhere in this world who needs to hear what you're doing, whether you know it or not. Um, so play or sing or write for that person, because whether they are one or 15 or billions of people, that song or that lyric has the potential to impact the rest of their lives. So that's how much change you have in your hands, in your voice, in your instrument. So please keep doing
That is exactly what they needed to hear.
it.
Lisa, thank you so,
Doug, thank
so
you.
much. Um,
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
you are more than welcome and welcome anytime. Can we do that? We're going to do this again. I mean, that's free. All right. Come on back. And Lisa will be back again. Thank you so much.